My husband's hands took my pain, and my baby's breath. I still see it as clear as if it happened yesterday. The room smelled of burning wood from the stove. My baby was crying in my arms, red-faced and gasping, and I was weak, too weak, from the long days of bleeding and fever after the birth. I whispered for help, my voice breaking like dry leaves in the wind. And then my husband, John, walked in. First, I thought he came to save us. He bent over me, his hands trembling, reaching for the baby in my arms. His palms pressed against my face, and for a strange second the pain that had been gnawing in my body melted away. I felt light, free. But when I looked down, those same hands that took my pain were pressing too hard on my baby's tiny chest. My child's cry choked, sputtered, and then silence. That silence was louder than thunder. I screamed, but my voice never came out. I tried to grab my baby back, but my strength was gone. And right then I realized something so terrifying. Something that no woman should ever have to realize about the man she trusts with her life. My husband's hands had healed me, but they had stolen the breath of our child. And before I tell you what happened after that, before I take you through the fire, the tears, and the secrets, I need to stop here and say, my name is Martha Williams. I'm 78 years old, and I'm telling you this story from my little porch here in Birmingham, Alabama. If you are listening to me right now, please don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the rest of this story, because trust me, you will want to know how it all ends. And let me know in the comments where in the country you're watching from. I love to hear where my family of listeners are tuning in. Now let's go back to the beginning. I was only 19 when I first laid eyes on John. It was the summer of 1964. The whole country was buzzing with change. Marches on the streets, voices shouting for freedom, men going off to Vietnam. But in our small Alabama town, the world felt slower, tucked away behind the hills and cotton fields. That's where I met him, tall, broad shoulders, a smile that could melt butter on a cold day. Everyone said he had a gift in his hands. He could fix anything, from broken radios to injured animals. Folks swore they saw him set a bird's broken wing and watch it fly away just the next day. I didn't believe it at first. I thought it was just small-town gossip, the way people like to spin tales when they've got little else to do. But when my papa's back pain flared so bad he couldn't get out of bed, John came by. He laid his hands on Papa's spine, closed his eyes like he was praying, and within minutes Papa was sitting up, sweating but smiling, saying the pain was gone. That was the day I began to trust him. Our courtship was like a whirlwind. We'd walk down to the river, skipping stones, him telling me about how he wanted to build us a little house on the edge of town. He said his hands weren't just for healing but for creating. He wanted to use them to make a life for us. At night, I'd lay in bed thinking about those hands, how gentle they were, how strong. I didn't know then that the same hands that made me feel safe would one day make me feel terror like I'd never known. Life was not easy back then. Work was hard, money was scarce, and the world outside our little bubble was restless. But when John and I married, I thought we could withstand anything. And when I found out I was pregnant, I thought God had smiled on us. But pregnancy was not kind to me. I was small-boned, frail, and the baby inside me seemed to take every ounce of strength I had. Some days I couldn't rise from the bed, my back and belly aching. My mama would come by, bringing soups and herbs, whispering old prayers over me. John would place his hands on my swollen feet, and the swelling would ease. He'd touch my temples and the headaches would fade. He always told me, "Don't worry, Martha. My hands will keep you safe." I wanted to believe him. The baby came on a stormy night. Rain hammered the roof, lightning split the sky. I was screaming, clawing at the sheets, the pain ripping me apart. The midwife wiped sweat from my forehead, whispering for me to push harder, harder. And then, after what felt like an eternity, I heard the shrill cry of my baby. A girl. My little girl. Her tiny fingers curled around mine, and I wept with joy. But my body did not stop bleeding. The midwife's face turned pale. She pressed rags between my legs, but the blood kept flowing. I felt myself slipping, floating away. John burst into the room, shoving the midwife aside. His hands pressed against my belly, and suddenly the pain dulled. The bleeding slowed. My vision cleared. I thought he saved me. But in my relief, I didn't notice right away what his other hand was doing. It reached for the baby. At first, I thought he was just cradling her. But then his thumb pressed against her chest, firm, too firm. Her cries faltered. Her lips turned pale. I tried to scream, to stop him, but the weakness kept me pinned. My hands clawed at the sheets, at the air, but not at him. And then it was quiet. Too quiet. That's where I left you at the beginning of my story. The moment his hands both healed and destroyed. But let me tell you what came after. The midwife shrieked, grabbing the baby from his arms, trying to revive her. She pressed her tiny chest, blew small breaths into her mouth. But John pulled her back, shouting, "It's too late. She wasn't meant to live." His eyes, oh Lord, his eyes, were wild, glowing with something I had never seen before. It wasn't grief. It wasn't shock. It was certainty. Like he truly believed what he did was right. That was the first night I feared my husband. The days that followed were heavy, filled with whispers. People in town came to pay respects, bringing casseroles and prayers. But none of them knew what had truly happened in that room. I wanted to tell them, but how could I? Who would believe me, when everyone thought John's hands were a blessing, not a curse? So I stayed silent. But silence, my dear listeners, is a dangerous thing. Because silence lets the darkness grow. And it did. In ways I could never have imagined. One night, not long after the funeral, I woke to find John standing over me. His hands hovered above my chest, his fingers twitching. His eyes were shut, his lips murmuring words I didn't understand. My body went cold. I didn't know if he was healing me, or taking something away. And just as I opened my mouth to call out for help, the lamp by the bedside table shattered, without anyone touching it. And that, my friends, is where I'll leave you for now. The lamp burst into 1,000 glittering shards, and the sound was so sharp it cut through the silence of the night like a scream. I gasped, clutching the sheets to my chest, my eyes darting from the broken lamp to John standing above me. He didn't even flinch. His hands, those cursed hands, hung in the air like claws frozen mid-strike. His lips kept moving, whispering words too low for me to understand. And then, just like that, his eyes snapped open. He looked down at me and smiled. "Martha," he said softly, "I was only keeping the sickness away." I didn't know what sickness he was talking about. My body felt fine, but my soul? My soul trembled like a leaf in the wind. The next morning, the house was quiet. John went out early, saying he had work at the mill. I walked barefoot across the wooden floor, sweeping up the shards of glass from the broken lamp. As I bent down, my fingers brushed one of the pieces, and a sharp sting cut across my skin. A bead of blood welled up. I pressed my hand against my apron, and for just a second I swore I felt John's hand over mine, though he wasn't there. The warmth of it. The pressure. As if his spirit lingered in every corner of that house. I told myself I was imagining things. Grief makes you see shadows where there are none. But when the neighbors came by to bring pies and check on me, one of them, Mrs. Caldwell, pulled me aside. "You be careful, Martha," she whispered, her eyes darting toward the door where John had just walked out. "Men with gifts like his, they don't always use them right." Her words stuck to me like burrs. All day I couldn't shake them. That evening John returned home, dirt on his boots and sweat dripping down his face. He kissed my forehead like nothing was wrong, like he hadn't nearly crushed the life from me and taken it from our child. I sat at the table, my hands trembling as I ladled soup into his bowl. "Something's coming, Martha," he said suddenly, his voice low, his spoon hovering in the air. "I can feel it in my hands. A darkness. It's trying to get into this house." I stared at him, the steam from the soup fogging between us. My heart pounded. Was it real? Or was it only in his head? That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, listening to the sound of his breathing beside me. Then in the deep hours of darkness, I heard it, something scratching at the window. Slow, steady, like fingernails dragging on glass. I turned my head, and there, in the faint moonlight, I saw it. A hand, pale, thin, pressed against the outside of the window pane. And it wasn't John's. The hand on the window didn't move. It just pressed there, flat and pale, its long fingers stretching wider than any normal hand should. My breath caught in my throat. For a moment, I thought maybe it was just a trick of the moonlight, my mind weaving shadows into horrors. But then the fingers twitched. I jolted upright, my hands clutching the blanket so tight my knuckles burned white. John, I whispered, shaking him. John, wake up. Look. He opened his eyes slowly, as though he had been expecting this. When he turned his head toward the window, he didn't gasp. He didn't even blink. Instead, he smiled, like a man greeting an old friend. I told you, Martha, he said softly. The darkness is here. Before I could speak, he was on his feet, walking toward the window as though drawn by an invisible thread. The boards creaked under his weight. I wanted to stop him, to grab his arm and beg him not to open it, but fear pinned me down. He raised his hand to the glass, palm against palm with the one outside. The air in the room grew colder. My breath puffed white in front of me, though it was the middle of summer. My skin prickled as if 1,000 invisible insects crawled over me. Then with a sudden crack, the glass shattered inward. Shards rained down across the floor, glinting like sharp stars. But when I dared to look again, there was no figure outside. Nobody. Only the sound of the night breeze whistling through the broken window. John turned to me, his hand bleeding from the shards. And yet he looked almost peaceful. It's done, he whispered. I let it in. I could not sleep after that. While John lay back down as calm as a child after prayers, I sat frozen on the edge of the bed, staring at the dark hole where the window once was. The night air carried strange whispers, like voices calling my name, stretching it long and thin, Martha. When morning finally came, I stumbled out of bed, exhausted and shaking. I went to patch the window with cardboard and cloth, anything to keep the chill from seeping in. My hands trembled so badly I could barely hammer the nails. But what shook me more than the cold was John's silence. He just sat there, watching me, his bleeding hand wrapped in a rag. His eyes followed my every move. Why didn't you scream? I asked him finally. Why weren't you afraid? He looked at me with such stillness that my skin crawled. Because I know what it wants. It doesn't want me. I swallowed hard. Then who? His gaze lingered on me so long that I had to look away. The days that followed were heavy with unease. Little things began to happen around the house. The rocking chair by the fireplace would creak though no one sat in it. Candles burned down twice as fast. Once, when I went to fetch water from the well, I heard a baby crying deep inside it. I dropped the bucket and ran back to the house, clutching my chest, my heart hammering like a drum. I didn't tell John about the crying. I couldn't. Because part of me feared it was my own mind conjuring ghosts of the baby we'd lost. But one night, when the air was thick and restless, John proved me wrong. We were sitting in the kitchen. The lantern flickered, shadows dancing on the walls. Suddenly, the temperature dropped again, just as it had the night the hand appeared. John set his spoon down slowly, his eyes lifting toward the door. She's here, he whispered. I froze. Who's here? Before he could answer, the door creaked open. The hinges wailed like something alive. Cold air swept inside, swirling around my ankles. And then I heard it. A sound that made my blood run colder than ice. The sound of a baby crying. Not outside. Not in the distance. But inside the room with us. The cry was sharp, shrill, and filled with pain. I clutched the table, my nails digging into the wood. My chest heaved. John, do you hear that? He nodded, but his face was calm. Too calm. It's ours, he said simply. I shook my head violently. No, she's gone, John. She's gone. He reached across the table and grabbed my hand. His grip was iron, his eyes burning with strange light. Not gone. Not gone, Martha. I can bring her back. My heart stopped. The crying grew louder, filling every corner of the kitchen until I thought my head would split. I slapped my hands over my ears, but the sound still pressed against my skull. John rose slowly from his chair, his shadow stretching long and thin across the wall. He moved toward the sound, his hands outstretched like a man walking through fog. John, stop! I cried, standing to chase him. But before I could reach him, the lantern flickered violently and went out. The room plunged into darkness. And in that darkness, something small and warm brushed against my leg. Something that breathed. I froze. My breath caught in my throat, and every hair on my body stood on end. Something soft pressed against my ankle, then slid past, brushing against the hem of my nightgown. I stumbled backward, hitting the edge of the table. "John!" I gasped into the dark. The only answer was that tiny sound, breathing. Not the deep, steady breaths of a man, but the short, uneven huffs of an infant. The lantern sputtered back to life with a sudden hiss, casting a weak, trembling light across the kitchen. My eyes darted downward. At first I saw nothing, just shadows creeping along the floorboards. But then from the edge of the room, I saw it. A bundle. Small. Wrapped in the same kind of blanket I had held my baby in on the night she was born. My heart lurched into my throat. My hands shook as I clutched the table for balance. No. Iwisparat. This isn't real. This can't be real. The bundle moved. The blanket shifted, and a tiny hand, pale and perfect, slipped out. Fingers curled, grasping at the air. The sound of crying filled the room again, this time sharper, louder. I dropped to my knees before I could stop myself. Every part of me screamed not to touch it, not to believe it, but the mother in me, the broken, grieving mother, leaned closer. Tears blurred my vision as I reached out a trembling hand. "Martha!" John's voice cut through the air, low and stern. I froze. He stood in the corner, his face half hidden by shadow, but his eyes glowed with a strange, feverish fire. "Don't touch her," he warned. I jerked my hand back as if burned. My chest heaved with confusion. "But it's her, John. It's our baby." He shook his head slowly. "No. Not yet. If you touch her, she'll take you too." The words chilled me deeper than the cold air seeping through the broken window. My baby, my sweet girl, was right there crying for me. But John's words clamped around my heart like a vice. Take me too? What did that mean? The bundle on the floor stirred again. The crying turned into something else. Something darker. It stretched, warped, like the sound of an infant played backward on a record. My stomach twisted. And then, right before my eyes, the tiny hand that had slipped out of the blanket began to change. The fingers lengthened unnaturally, bending at sharp angles, curling like claws. I screamed and scrambled backward across the floor. The bundle rolled toward me, slow at first, then faster, as though pulled by something unseen. John stepped forward, his hands raised, his voice booming in a language I didn't understand. The air crackled. The walls trembled. And then, the blanket burst open. What lay inside was not a baby. It was something else. The blanket unraveled like a snake shedding its skin, and what tumbled out onto the floor made my stomach twist. At first, I thought it was a baby. Limbs small, skin pale, its body trembling as if gasping for air. But as the lantern flickered, I saw what it really was. Its head was too large, its mouth too wide, stretching from cheek to cheek like a jagged tear. Its eyes were black pools, too deep for something so small. And the sound it made, it wasn't crying anymore. It was laughing. A baby's laugh, but hollow, broken, wrong. I clutched my chest and staggered backward. My heart hammering so loud I thought it would wake the whole town. "Lord help us," I whispered, my voice shaking. "Lord help us." John didn't move back. No, he stepped closer. His face lit up with something like awe. "Do you see it, Martha? Do you see? She came back. That's not her." I screamed. "That's not our baby." But he didn't hear me. He bent down, his hands reaching for the creature as if it was made of gold. The moment his fingers brushed its skin, the air in the room shifted. I felt it in my bones. The temperature dropped again, the lantern flickered wildly, and every shadow in the house seemed to lean closer. The creature stopped laughing. It turned its black eyes toward me. And then it spoke. Not in the gurgling babble of an infant, but in a voice that echoed, low and deep, as if it came from the bottom of a well. "Mama!" My knees buckled. My body wanted to collapse, but terror kept me upright. Tears blurred my vision. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "You're not mine. You're not mine." John cradled the thing in his arms, rocking it like it was flesh of his flesh. His face softened, almost tender. "She's ours, Martha. Don't you hear her? Don't you feel her?" I wanted to rip it from his hands and throw it into the fire, but I couldn't move. I was paralyzed between horror and grief, between the love of a mother and the fear of a woman staring at something unholy. Then, without warning, the creature lunged. Its tiny hands shot forward, claws gleaming under the lantern light. It grabbed a chunk of John's beard and pulled hard. His head jerked back, but instead of crying out in pain, he laughed. "She's strong," he said, his voice shaking with pride. "Stronger than before." I couldn't take it anymore. My scream ripped through the house, raw and desperate. I stumbled to the fireplace, snatched a log still glowing with embers, and swung it toward them. The creature shrieked. A sound that split my ears and leapt from John's arms. It scuttled across the floor like a spider, its limbs bending at odd angles, too fast for something so small. I swung again, the log slamming into the floorboards where it had been a heartbeat before. Sparks scattered, the smell of smoke filling the air. When I turned, the creature was gone. The blanket lay empty, torn in two, its edges smoking as if burned by invisible fire. I stood frozen, the log trembling in my hands, my chest heaving. "Where is it?" I cried. "Where did it go?" John only stared at me, his face pale but his eyes shining with that terrible light. "She's still here. Don't you feel her?" I dropped the log, my whole body shaking. I wanted to run out of that house, down the dirt road, and never look back. But my legs wouldn't move. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the corner of the room, clutching my Bible, rocking myself as the house groaned and whispered. Every so often I heard it, the faint sound of giggles like a baby hiding in the walls. By morning the house felt empty, as though nothing had happened. Sunlight poured through the cracked window, and the world outside looked so normal it nearly drove me mad. Birds chirped. The neighbor's rooster crowed. John acted as if the night had been a dream. He whistled while fixing the window, whistled while mending his work boots, whistled while sipping his coffee. But every time he looked at me, I saw it in his eyes. That belief. That certainty. "She's with us now," he said softly when I couldn't stand the silence any longer. "You should be glad, Martha. You should thank God." I slammed my cup down so hard coffee splashed across the table. "That thing is not our child. Don't you dare call it that." His jaw tightened. For the first time, anger flashed across his face. "You don't understand. You never had the gift. You never felt what I feel in my hands." "Your hands?" I spat. "Your hands killed her, John. And now they've brought something else here. Something evil." The words hung between us like smoke. His face darkened, and for a moment I thought he might strike me. Instead, he turned away, his shoulders stiff, his voice low. "You'll see," he said. "She'll make herself known to you." I wished then that I had run. I wished I had taken my mother's advice and left him the day I saw what his hands could do. But I didn't. I stayed. That night, as the crickets sang outside and John snored beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. And that's when I heard it. Not laughter. Not crying. But words. Whispered right into my ear. "Why didn't you save me, Mama?" I screamed. And when I turned, the space beside my bed was not empty. I froze, my scream choking in my throat. The space beside my bed was not empty. In the glow of the moonlight pouring through the cracked window, I saw her. A little figure crouched low, her head cocked to one side like a curious bird. She looked almost human, almost, but her body was too thin, her arms too long, her eyes too dark. Her mouth stretched into a smile, but it wasn't the sweet smile of an infant. It was a grin too wide, too sharp, like a knife cutting across her face. "Why didn't you save me, Mama?" she whispered again, her voice like dry leaves scratching against stone. I clutched my Bible tighter, holding it between us as if the leather cover could shield me. My lips trembled as I forced out words, broken but desperate. "In the name of Jesus Christ, leave this house." The figure tilted her head back and laughed. A sound too big for her small body. It shook the walls, rattled the windows, made the lantern flicker though no one had touched it. John stirred beside me. His eyes opened slowly, but when he saw the figure he didn't scream. He didn't move. His face softened into something almost joyful. "You see her now," he whispered as if in awe. "You see her too. She's not ours, John." I cried, my voice breaking. "That thing isn't our baby. It's a curse." But he only sat up, reaching his hands toward her as if to welcome her into his arms. The creature crawled forward on all fours, her movements jerky, her limbs bending wrong. My stomach churned. I scrambled back against the headboard, pressing myself as far away as I could. Mama, the creature whispered again, her eyes locking on mine. Don't let him touch me. If he touches me again, you'll both be mine. My blood ran cold. John reached farther, his fingertips brushing the edge of her arm. I opened my mouth to scream, to warn him to stop him. And then the lantern went out. The room plunged into darkness, and all I could hear was John's laughter blending with the sound of something small crawling across the bed toward me. The darkness swallowed everything. The walls, the bed, the very air. I couldn't even see my own hands clutching the Bible against my chest. All I could hear was the sound, the crawling. Tiny fingers, nails scratching against the sheets, inching closer and closer to me. John, I hissed, my voice shaking. Light the lantern. Do something. But instead of moving, he laughed. Low at first, then louder, until it echoed through the blackness. She came back for us, Martha, he said, his voice trembling with a strange joy. Our little girl came back. No, my throat was raw. That's not her. That's not our child. The crawling stopped. Silence pressed heavy against my ears. And then right beside me, I felt it, the weight of something small climbing onto the bed. The mattress dipped. My breath caught. My body screamed at me to run. But my legs were like stone. Then a tiny hand brushed against my arm. Cold. Too cold. I bit down on a scream, clutching the Bible so tight my knuckles ached. My lips moved on instinct, whispering the only words I knew could hold back the dark. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. The hand tightened, its claws pricking my skin through my nightgown. A voice, soft and broken, breathed against my ear. Mama, you prayed then too. But you still let him take me. Tears welled in my eyes, hot against my cheeks. I didn't let him, I whispered. I tried to save you. The voice twisted, no longer soft, but sharp as shattered glass. Liar. The mattress shook as the creature scrambled closer, her breath hissing against my face. I turned my head, though I couldn't see, and screamed. Leave us alone. Suddenly a light flared. The lantern sputtered back to life, casting its weak glow across the room. And there she was. The figure knelt on the bed between John and me, her small body hunched, her head tilted, her grin stretched too wide, her black eyes locked on mine. John sat cross-legged at the edge of the bed, staring at her with tears streaming down his face. She's ours, Martha. She's our blessing. Can't you see? I shook my head violently, pressing my back into the headboard. Look at her, John. She's not a child, she's a demon. The figure giggled, a sound so wrong it made bow rise in my throat. She crawled toward me, her arms bending backward like broken twigs. The closer she got, the colder the room became. Frost began to form on the window, creeping across the glass in jagged lines. I held the Bible up like a shield. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, I command you. Before I could finish, the creature let out a shriek. Not a baby's cry this time, but a piercing scream that rattled the lantern until it toppled and clattered to the floor. The flame inside danced wildly, threatening to catch on the blankets. John lunged forward, grabbing the creature in his arms again. He rocked her, whispering nonsense words, kissing her twisted forehead as though she were truly ours. Don't, I choked out, reaching toward him. John, don't hold it. Don't let it touch you. But he wouldn't listen. He looked at me, his eyes wild, his voice breaking. She's all we have, Martha. I won't lose her again. The creature's face turned against his chest, but her eyes still found mine. Her grin widened, and in a voice that made my skin crawl, she whispered, Then he's mine now. Before I could move, the lantern tipped fully onto its side. The blanket at the foot of the bed caught fire. Flames licked upward, orange and hungry. Smoke filled the room. I coughed, stumbling toward it, trying to beat it down with my nightgown. Martha! John shouted, clutching the creature tighter. Save her first. Not the fire. She's not real. I screamed back, my lungs burning. The creature giggled again, the sound swallowed by the crackle of the fire. The heat grew unbearable, smoke blinding me, flames climbing higher. I dropped the Bible and pulled at the burning blanket, but the fire only spread faster. Sparks leapt to the curtains, and within seconds the whole room was glowing red. John stood in the middle of it all, holding the creature high above his head like an offering. His face was lit by firelight, half-shadowed, half-holy, as if he were a priest at some unholy altar. "Do you see her now, Martha?" he cried over the roar of the flames. "Do you believe she's ours?" The fire raged around us, the walls creaking, the ceiling spitting ash. I stumbled toward him, choking, my voice breaking. "She'll kill us all," I shouted. "Put her down." But before he could answer, the creature turned its head toward him and sank its teeth into his neck. John's scream ripped through the burning house. John's scream tore through the flames, louder than the crackling wood, louder than the collapsing beams above us. Blood ran down his neck where the creature clung, its teeth sunk deep like a starving beast. "John!" I cried, stumbling through the smoke, my eyes burning, my lungs seizing with every breath. But instead of pulling it off, instead of fighting for his life, John held the thing tighter. His face twisted in agony and ecstasy all at once. His voice was hoarse, desperate. "She's ours, Martha. She's ours." The fire roared, greedy and wild. The curtains were nothing but ribbons of flame. The floorboards groaned under our feet, and the ceiling sagged as smoke poured into every corner. I coughed until my chest felt like it would split. My hands reached for him, but the heat seared my skin, driving me back. The creature lifted its head, blood dripping from its mouth, black eyes shining through the smoke. It grinned at me, red teeth glistening. "Mama," it whispered almost tenderly. "No," I screamed, stumbling toward the door. "You're not mine, you'll never be mine." The floor cracked behind me with a thunderous snap, flames shooting up like claws. The whole house was coming down, and still John clutched that thing like it was salvation instead of damnation. "Leave it, John," I shouted, tears streaming down my face. "We have to get out." He shook his head violently, his voice ragged. "I'll never leave her. If you can't love her, then you don't love me." My heart shattered, but survival screamed louder than grief. I grabbed the doorknob, it scorched my palm, but I yanked it open anyway. Cold night air rushed in, sweet and sharp compared to the suffocating smoke. I stumbled onto the porch, gasping, coughing, my nightgown torn and singed. Behind me the flames roared higher. I turned back, desperate, screaming over the fire. "John! Please! Come with me!" Through the thick smoke I saw him. My husband, silhouetted by flames, clutching the writhing creature to his chest. His body swayed, his face pale, blood still pouring down his neck. For a moment, I thought he would follow. But then his lips moved, and I realized he wasn't talking to me. He was whispering to it. And before I could call again, before I could beg, the ceiling above him gave way with a deafening crash. Flames and beams fell, swallowing him, and the creature, in a storm of fire. The sound of his scream was the last thing I heard before the roof caved in. I stumbled back into the yard, falling to my knees in the dirt, my body shaking. My eyes wide with horror as the house that held all my memories, my love, and my child burned to the ground. And through the roar of the fire, I swore I heard it again. A baby's laugh. The fire devoured everything. I sat in the dirt, coughing, my body trembling as the flames swallowed the house that had been my home. My eyes watered not only from the smoke but from the sight of it. My husband, my child, my life, gone in one night. Neighbors rushed down the dirt road, buckets in hand, shouting, trying to save what couldn't be saved. But the fire was too strong. It was no longer a house. It was a funeral pyre. Mrs. Caldwell grabbed my shoulders, shaking me. "Martha, where's John?" My mouth opened but no words came. Only a broken sob. By dawn, the house was nothing but smoldering ash. The neighbors whispered as they sifted through the wreckage, their faces grim. They found no body. Not John's. Not a child's. Nothing. That should have been a mercy. But instead it was worse. Because if there was no body, then where had they gone? I wandered through the ruins, my bare feet blackened with soot, my nightgown stiff with smoke. Every step cracked the charred wood beneath me, and then I stopped. Right in the middle of the ash, carved deep into the blackened floorboards, was a handprint. Small. Too small to be John's. And beside it, etched as though burned into the wood, were two words. "Find me." My knees buckled. My heart thudded so loud it drowned out the chatter of the neighbors. The laughter I thought I'd imagined during the fire echoed in my skull, growing louder, sharper, until it was all I could hear. And that's when I knew. The nightmare hadn't ended with the fire. It had only just begun. For days after the fire I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. The words burned into the floorboards haunted me. Find me. At night I heard it, the cry of a baby carried on the wind. Sometimes soft, sometimes sharp, always just far enough away that I could never be sure if it was real. The neighbors said grief was playing tricks on me, but I knew better. John hadn't come back. No body had been found. And yet sometimes when I closed my eyes, I swore I felt his hands again, warm, heavy, pressing against my chest as if to take the pain away. But with that comfort came something darker, a shadow clinging to me like smoke. I moved into my mother's small cabin at the edge of town. She made me broth, prayed over me, begged me not to speak of dark things. But how could I stay silent when every night I woke to whispers crawling across the walls? One night, I gathered the courage to follow the sound. I wrapped myself in a shawl and stepped out into the cold. The moon hung low, pale as bone, and the air carried that laugh again, that awful broken laugh. It led me past the charred remains of my house, down into the woods. The trees swayed though there was no wind. My feet crunched over leaves, every step echoing too loud in the silence. And then I saw it. A small bundle lying at the base of an oak tree, wrapped in a blanket that was not burned, not torn. Just as white and clean as the day my baby was born. The bundle shifted. Something inside moved. And a tiny voice whispered, "Mama." My breath caught in my throat. The bundle lay so still, so ordinary against the roots of that oak tree. Yet everything in me screamed to turn and run. Still, my feet moved forward as if they belonged to someone else. "Mama," the voice whispered again, muffled through the blanket. Tears stung my eyes. Part of me ached to scoop it up, to believe my baby had been given back. But the memory of what I'd seen, those black eyes, those claws, that grin, burned like a warning in my mind. I crouched low, trembling, my hands hovering just above the bundle. "If you are mine," I whispered, "then show me." The blanket shifted. Slowly, carefully, a tiny hand slipped out, pale, delicate, almost perfect. For a heartbeat, my heart leapt with hope. But then I saw it. The fingers were too long, too thin, bending at odd angles as they curled toward me. I stumbled back, clutching my shawl to my chest. "No," I whispered. "You're not mine. You're not." The bundle shook violently, the voice rising from a whisper to a shriek. "Mama, you left me. You let him take me." The sound pierced the woods, sending birds scattering from the trees. I covered my ears, sobbing, but the cry drilled into me, deeper and deeper, until it wasn't just in my ears anymore. It was inside my head. Then all at once the noise stopped. The woods fell silent. I lowered my hands slowly, my chest heaving. The bundle was still again, too still. I forced myself to lean forward, just enough to see. The blanket had loosened, fallen open, and there lying inside was not a child at all, but a mass of black feathers, wet and glistening, as if ripped from a bird. They twitched once, then stilled. My stomach turned. I staggered backward, tripping over a root, nearly falling. That's when I heard the laugh. Not from the bundle. From behind me. I spun around and saw John. His face pale, his shirt still stained with blood, his eyes burning with that same fevered light. He stood just beyond the trees, half in shadow, half in moonlight. And in his arms he cradled her. Our baby. Smiling. My knees went weak. There he was, John, standing in the moonlight like death itself had spat him back out. His neck was still torn where the creature had bitten him, but he looked stronger, taller, more alive than before. And in his arms she lay still, wrapped in that same white blanket. Her tiny face peeked out, smiling as though none of the horror had ever happened. "John," I whispered, my voice breaking. "You're dead. You burned." He tilted his head, his smile too calm. "The fire didn't take us, Martha. It freed us." He rocked the bundle gently, eyes shining with devotion. "She's ours again. Whole. Don't you see? God gave her back." Tears streamed down my face, but fear rooted me where I stood. "That's not God's work," I whispered. "That's the devil's hand." His face darkened, jaw tight. "Always doubting. Always fighting me. Don't you hear her? Don't you feel her?" He stepped closer, the crunch of leaves under his boots loud in the still night. She's calling for you, Martha. She wants her mama. The bundle stirred. Two tiny hands slipped free, one soft and human, the other twisted, clawed. My stomach lurched. I shook my head violently, backing away. Stay back, John. Please, for the love of God, stay back. But he only smiled wider. And then the baby's mouth opened, wider than any mouth should, stretching across her face as a voice not her own poured out, low, guttural, ancient. You can't run, Mama. You already belong to me. The trees around us groaned, their branches twisting toward me like reaching arms. And John stepped forward, holding her out to me. The ground felt alive beneath my feet, pulsing with every word that came from her mouth. The trees leaned in closer, their branches creaking like bones. My heart slammed against my ribs as John's arms stretched toward me, offering the child like she was some sacred gift. Take her, Martha, he urged, his voice breaking between love and madness. Hold your daughter. End this pain. I shook my head, tears blinding me. That's not my daughter. My baby's gone. You know she's gone. John's face twisted, fury flashing in his eyes. Say that again, and I swear, you'll never see her smile again. His grip tightened around the bundle until the baby let out a shrill cry, a sound so piercing it felt like glass shattering inside my skull. I dropped to my knees, clutching my ears, screaming for it to stop. Please. Please don't. The wail ended suddenly, leaving only silence. When I looked up, John was staring down at me, his expression hollow. Slowly, he lowered the child into my arms. I should have pushed it away. I wanted to. But the weight of her pressed into my chest before I could think. And then I felt it. The small hand against my skin. The warmth. The heartbeat. For a moment it felt real. She felt real. My baby. My sweet lost baby. My arms tightened around her, my tears soaking into her blanket. But as I looked down, the warmth turned to ice. The heartbeat slowed, then stopped. The face that smiled up at me twisted into a mask of blackened flesh and sharp teeth. And in my arms she whispered, "Now you can never let go." Her voice slithered into my ears, cold as the grave. Now you can never let go. The weight of her in my arms grew heavier, pressing me down to the forest floor. My arms trembled, but I couldn't release her. It was as if unseen chains bound my hands tight around her body. John knelt beside me, his bloodied face shining with tears and devotion. Do you feel it now? Do you see? She's real, Martha. She's ours. I shook my head violently, choking on sobs. This isn't her. This is a curse, John. The baby's blackened lips curled into a grin. Mama doesn't want me, she hissed, her eyes glittering like shards of obsidian. But you wanted me, Papa. You brought me back. John's hand stroked her hair and he whispered, Always. I'll always want you. The ground beneath us rumbled, and the oak tree's roots twisted outward, wrapping around my ankles. I screamed, trying to pull free, but the more I struggled, the tighter they held. It felt like the forest itself wanted me bound to that spot. The child in my arms laughed, a shrill, fractured sound. Her little hands, one human and one clawed, reached for my face. She pressed her cold palm against my cheek. And suddenly I was no longer in the woods. I was back in the fire. The flames roared around me, choking smoke filling my lungs. John stood in the middle of it, cradling the baby, his face lit by the blaze. She's all we have, Martha, he cried. Don't take her from me again. The vision shifted. Now I was standing at the riverbank the night she died, the water rushing cold and merciless. John held the baby above the water, his eyes wild. It's the only way. Don't you understand? I reached for him in the vision, screaming. No. Stop. But the water swallowed her cry. My baby's breath stolen forever. When I came back to the woods, the creature's laughter echoed through me. You let him drown me. You let him burn me. And still you cling to me. Mama, you're mine. No. I sobbed, thrashing, the roots cutting deeper into my skin. I tried to save you. I tried. John's hand gripped my chin, forcing my face to meet his. His eyes burned with an unholy light. Don't lie to her, Martha. You failed her. But we can make it right. We can give her what she needs. What she needs? I spat, my tears mixing with ash on my cheeks. She needs peace. The baby's jaw unhinged, stretching wide, rows of teeth glistening in the moonlight. Her breath, cold as the grave, spilled across my face. No peace. Never peace. Only you. She lunged, her mouth sinking toward my throat. I screamed, thrashing, my arms finally breaking free of their invisible chains. On instinct, I shoved her away, and the creature tumbled to the ground. She shrieked, the sound splitting the night as the forest shook around us. John roared in rage, his body lunging for me. "You'll kill her again," he bellowed. I scrambled backward, my feet tangled in roots, my hands grasping for anything. A rock, a branch, anything to fight with. My fingers closed around a shard of blackened wood, sharp at the end, broken from some old fire. "John, listen," I cried, holding it out. "That thing isn't her. It's a demon wearing her face." He shook his head, his body trembling. "You don't see it. You never saw it. You failed her once. I won't let you do it again." The creature crawled on all fours, its body jerking like a spider. Its laugh curdled the air as it darted toward me, claws scraping the ground. My heart pounded. My breath tore from my chest. There was no time to think, only act. I raised the shard of wood high, aiming as the thing leapt. And then, a scream. Not from me, not from the creature. From John. He had thrown himself between us. The shard sank deep into his chest. His eyes went wide, his breath shuddering. Blood spilled warm across my hands. The baby creature froze, its black eyes narrowing, its grin fading. Slowly, it turned its gaze toward John, who crumpled to the ground. His hand grasped the shard, but instead of pulling it free, he pushed it deeper into himself as though he'd chosen it. With his last breath he whispered, "She's ours." Then his body fell still. The creature let out a wail so loud it rattled the trees. A sound not of a baby but of something ancient, enraged. Its form shimmered, flickering between child and shadow, between sweetness and horror. And I realized then, John's death had not killed it. It had only unbound it. The thing rose taller, its body stretching upward, towering above me, its eyes glowing like embers. The blanket shredded away, and the woods filled with a storm of black feathers. I dropped to my knees, clutching the Bible I had nearly forgotten, my voice trembling but desperate as I opened my mouth to pray. But before a word left my lips, the creature's hand wrapped around my throat, and in a voice that shook the very ground, it hissed, "You are mine, Mama. Forever." The creature's grip on my throat tightened, lifting me off the ground as if I weighed nothing. My legs kicked helplessly, my lungs burning for air. Its black eyes blazed, and its grin stretched wider, splitting its face in two. "You are mine, Mama," it growled, its voice rumbling through the trees. With the last of my strength, I clutched the Bible in my hands. My vision blurred, but my lips moved on their own. Words I'd known since childhood tumbled out in gasps. "The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want." The thing shrieked, its grip faltering as smoke poured from its skin. My feet touched the ground, and I dropped to my knees, coughing, forcing the words louder. "Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil." The forest shook, branches snapping, roots twisting. The creature writhed, its form collapsing in on itself, feathers scattering like ash in the wind. It clawed at the air, shrieking, "Mama, don't leave me. Don't forsake me." Tears streamed down my face, my voice breaking. "You're not my child. You never were. My baby's soul is with God, not with you." With one final scream, the shadow ripped apart, dissolving into the night like smoke in the wind. Silence followed, heavy, endless. The trees stood still again. I collapsed to the ground, the Bible clutched against my chest, sobbing until there were no tears left. John was gone. My baby was gone. But the evil that had worn their faces was gone too. When morning came, I rose from the ashes of the night. My body was weak, but my soul carried a fire of its own. I knew then the truth. Grief is a door. If you leave it unguarded, something dark will walk through it. And that, my friends, is why I tell you this story. My name is Martha. I'm from the hills of Kentucky, and I'm 80 years old. I've lived long enough to know that pain will come for all of us, and it will whisper sweet lies if you let it. Don't open your door to those lies. Hold fast to faith, even when the night is darkest. Before I end, I want you to do something for me. If you've stayed with me through this long, terrible tale, then make sure you subscribe, like, and click the notification button, because there are more stories yet to tell. Stories of warnings, of lessons, of shadows best left alone. And tell me, from which part of the country are you watching this story? I'd love to know where my voice carries. As for me, I'll leave you with this truth. Not all hands that take away your pain come from love. Some come to steal your very breath.